Power. Power corrupts. Many rulers let that power go to their head. Many rulers abuse their power over others. Today, we are covering a few evil cartoon rulers. We will be talking about White Diamond from Steven Universe, the Nowhere King from Centaurworld, and Fire Lord Ozai from Avatar: The Last Airbender. As always, I'll be using my villain criteria. In case you're new to the channel, here's the criteria. Character design, personality and motives, abilities and powers, presence, actions, effects on the protagonist, and conclusion. So without further ado, let's begin with White Diamond from Steven Universe. In Steven Universe, the galaxy is mostly controlled by the Gem Empire, a race of powerful, technologically advanced people made of powerful gems. The Gem Empire is ruled by the Great Diamond Authority, and this authority is ultimately ruled by White Diamond. Let's start with design. White Diamond, as the ruler of the Gem Empire, needs to project strength, which White Diamond does. The first thing that stands out about White Diamond is her height. White Diamond towers over everyone, even her fellow diamonds. In fact, she significantly towers over the other diamonds, and they are already giants. Steven is barely the size of her heels, making her very imposing. She's also imposing in her elegance and composure. White Diamond believes she is perfection, and this shows in the way she dresses and holds herself. Just look at her posture. She holds this pose with her arms up, and pretty much doesn't move from this pose until her emotional breakdown. She poses as if she's a statue on display, allowing her sparkling flowing cape to be on full display. Her heels give her even more height, not that she needs anymore, just to make her even more intimidating. Her outfit is neat and elegant, giving her a sense of order and control. It makes her look well put together and in control, which again makes her more intimidating. Her outfit is inspired by 1930s to 1940s era design. Rebecca Sugar says that Hedy Lamarr and this cartoon called The Story of Menstruation were big inspirations for White Diamond, and it does really show in her design. Rebecca talks about a very specific scene that's about keeping up appearances. The animation talks about what it takes to be a desirable woman. This 1940s video encourages you to hide your emotions and put on a fake smile to appear pleasant. The animation has an unsettling feeling. The narration has a false warmth, making it feel hollow and fake. All of this is reflected in White Diamond. Her smile feels restrained. Everything about her feels fake, like it's a performance. Her smile, her pose, it's all this fake perfection that we see in the animation. It's the fake woman who's trying to appear pleasant on the outside that masks and hides her emotions. White Diamond's voice also replicates the voice in the animation. It's flat, clear, and somewhat commanding, and it holds a fake warmth to it. It can be pretty creepy, especially when her voice comes from other characters she's controlling.
Oh, thank you. How generous of you. Thank you, White Diamond. We feel so much better now. I feel excellent.
White Diamond's outfit was also very specifically chosen.
We had been avoiding certain markers of femininity for the gems, but we gave them all to her. We wanted her to have all these hallmarks of an old, stifling standard of beauty.
As Rebecca says, it's a stifling standard of beauty. It's controlling and consuming. It represents old ideas that refuse to evolve, old ideas that are used to control us. White Diamond's color palette is also very striking. Obviously, since her name is White Diamond, there's a lot of bright white in it. Her face is surrounded by a blinding, uninterrupted white. I really like this quote from White Diamond.
I'm certain I don't need you. After all, I'm every color of the light. But you're a part of me, the part I always have to repress.
As she says, white light is a combination of all colors in the visible light spectrum. She believes all gems are part of her and she's part of all gems, so this gives her white coloring more meaning. To contrast with her blinding light is her black nails and lipstick and eyelashes. All this creates a very striking contrast. It draws you to her wide, unsettling eyes and fake smile. Her nails look really deadly, like they're piercing blades, longer than Steven's body. They're extremely threatening, especially when she uses them to take Steven's gem. And finally, there's her head. It's enormous. It looks like a crown or a star, and lost in its blinding starlight is a small composed face, at least for the most part. When White Diamond picks up Steven, ready to try and set Pink Diamond free, her face is terrifying. Her eyes grow large and unhinged, as she grows eager to prove herself right. It's just unhinged and terrifying. Despite her pursuit of her version of perfection, her flaws can still leak through, as seen in this smile. On average, I think Steven Universe's character designs can be all over the place. Some designs are really good, some not so good, in my opinion. But with White Diamond, they knocked it out of the park. is very effective and well thought out. White Diamond gets a 4.5 out of 5 for design. Personality and motives. Since White Diamond thinks she's perfection, then by default she thinks she's always right. So she's extremely dismissive when it comes to others. She talks down to others. She's completely confident in herself. She's mostly calm and composed, so when Steven proves her wrong about him, she breaks down. She believes herself to be so perfect and in control, anything that challenges that worldview and finds flaws in her logic breaks her, because as mentioned, her persona is a facade. It's a mask that she wears to maintain her idea of perfection. She's extremely hard on her subjects, but equally hard on herself. Her identity is trying to be perfection, so behind the mask of perfection is nothing. She's devoted her existence to being perfect, so she doesn't know who she is without that. I'll read this quote from Rebecca Sugar, because who else would know this character better? Quote, White believes that because her gem channels white light, she's essentially gem light form all the time. All gems are made of light, and she is light manifest. She sees herself in all gems, and judges them as she would judge herself. She believes she is everyone, which is why she speaks for everyone. But the truth behind her identity and powers is that she has no identity at all. She needs other gems to behave as she would. She is very poorly differentiated, and any gem's behavior can be construed by her as a personal attack, if they are not behaving as she would. Her identity is so fragile that she can only judge. If she were to act or feel or want, she would open herself up to her own criticism. She has traded that chance to be someone for the power to be everyone, a decision so miserable that everyone on the planet has to suffer for it. So yeah, this comment gives us a lot of insight into White Diamond and her motivations. White Diamond's abilities of white light gave her the idea that she was a part of everyone, and everyone is a part of her, which has made her obsessed with control and perfection. After Steven proves her wrong, she breaks down in a tantrum because if she's not perfect, then who is she?
This can't be happening. I can't have a flaw. I'm supposed to be flawless. If I'm not perfect, then who am I?
I think that's why in the Steven Universe movie, White Diamond and the other diamonds are so needy towards Steven. They haven't found purpose yet, so they latch onto Steven and his positive teachings for fulfillment. And in Steven Universe Future, we see her finding some purpose in helping others, using her powers to project others' voices. Overall, I'll give her a 2 out of 5 for personality. There's nothing wrong with her, but she really just doesn't get enough screen time to dive deeper into her motivations. But for what little time we got with her, she did act as a perfect final boss and challenge for Steven. There's no talking or convincing her of anything because she's so stuck in her own ways. So she is a real challenge for Steven to overcome. Powers and abilities. White Diamond, being one of the diamonds, is one of the most powerful gems in the whole gem species. For starters, she's the tallest gem we've seen in the whole show, so obviously she's pretty strong. Her most obvious power is her white light power. It's a beam that shoots from her eyes that can control any gem it hits. The power is very strong. It allows her to corrupt and control any gem she crosses. It's very unsettling seeing White Diamond's voice come from our main cast of characters. It drains the gem of their color, turning them into an extension of White Diamond. Anyone under White Diamond's control can also shoot the white light from their eyes to infect other gems. This is the main power we see White Diamond use. She may not show many powers, but this one is just so powerful and unsettling that it just leaves such an impact. Now I don't know what to call this power, but when the diamonds combine their powers, they can shoot a beam of light from Homeworld, all across the galaxy to Earth. It was intended to destroy all the gems on Earth. Maybe if all the diamonds were there, instead of just white, blue, and yellow, it would have destroyed Earth, but instead it actually does something far worse. It corrupts all the gems on Earth who weren't shielded. All the corrupted gems lose themselves and become wild, savage animals. We see from Steven and the other diamonds that all the diamonds have a wide range of powers and abilities compared to other gems. So who truly knows the extent of White Diamond's list of powers? After beginning her reform in Steven Universe Future, White also gains a new power. She can allow others to channel themselves through White Diamond, so it's basically the reverse of her mind control. She can allow others to control her to use them to share messages. White Diamond, along with all the other diamonds, have the power to heal and cure corrupted gems. But honestly, White Diamond's biggest strength doesn't come from her actual powers. It comes from her control and influence of others. She controls the other diamonds, and by extension, the whole gem empire. Every gem is at her command. Overall, I'll give White Diamond a 3 out of 5 for powers and abilities. She's extremely strong and has so much potential for strength, but we really don't get to see her use much of it. Presence. White Diamond is not really very present throughout Steven Universe. The first hint we get of White Diamond's existence appears in Season 2, Episode 24. There's a mural of the diamonds, and there's a vague hint to White Diamond. We can also see in this episode some control panels showing the 4 diamond colors. Then in Season 3, Episode 24, Back to the Moon, we see the same mural of White Diamond again. It's not until Season 5 that we really start seeing White Diamond. We again get a hint of White Diamond in Season 5 Episode 2, when we see her giant mech ship in the distance. In Season 5 Episode 13, we briefly see White Diamond in a flashback. White Diamond isn't even name-dropped until Season 5 Episode 25. In the same episode, she finally makes her first appearance, which lasts approximately 30 seconds. Over the next 3 episodes, she is mentioned and appears in a dream, but she doesn't truly reappear until the last episode, where Steven finally confronts her. So it takes us 150 episodes till we even hear White Diamond's name, and she only appears in 2 episodes of the main show. Now, normally when talking about presence throughout the show, I talk about how their presence is felt through the show's world or their actions. So for Steven Universe, I would say the effects of the Empire also contribute to her presence, but I don't really feel that way of Steven Universe. I feel the credit goes to Yellow and Blue Diamond. They were revealed and used way earlier in the show, making them feel like the ones pulling the strings. Overall, I don't feel White Diamond has a strong presence throughout the show. There's only little hints to her existence in the earlier seasons, leaving her more in the hands of theorists, as the show was airing. I'll give White Diamond a 1.5 out of 5 for presence. Actions. Let's start with the obvious one. White Diamond, along with Blue and Yellow Diamond, use their corrupting light on Earth. This corrupts all the gems on Earth, causing them to suffer. It also causes our main cast of characters to suffer as well. A lot of the threats in Steven Universe, especially in Season 1, are corrupted gems, caused by the diamonds. The corruption also affects other characters on an emotional level. The crystal gems have to watch their former friends and allies turned into savage beasts. In the show, the biggest moment for White Diamond is the final confrontation with Steven and the crystal gems. She starts by stopping Steven and Connie's escape from Homeworld. Then she takes control of Blue and Yellow Diamond, Steven's new allies. She then drops Steven and the unformed gems into a giant hole that almost kills all the main characters. Then we have the final battle, where White Diamond takes control of Steven's friends, leaving Steven isolated. She then puppets them in front of Steven just to add to the trauma. White Diamond then monologues at Steven. Their discussion makes Steven question what he even is. This moment is very significant, but I'll discuss it more in the effects on the protagonists. And finally, White Diamond removes Steven's gem, which could have killed him on the spot. These are White Diamond's on-screen actions, but being the ruler of the Gem Empire, there's a lot of direct and indirect actions we don't see on screen. Well, for starters, there's the general structure of the Gem Empire. It's strict and harsh on the gem race. Individualism isn't encouraged for gems. All gems are made with a single purpose and nothing more. This is directly enforced by White Diamond. She keeps all gems under a lot of pressure. The Gem Empire is the direct cause of a lot of tragedies. The gems go world to world, draining them of their resources. The gems don't care if there's any other life forms on the planet. They just drain and destroy, destroying countless worlds and species. But despite the Gem Empire's crimes against other planets, they have done many crimes against their own people. For example, the Cluster. The Gem Empire creates the giant geo-weapon called the Cluster. It's an amalgamation of countless shattered gems who were left over from the war. They're all forced together into one entity. It's the size of the Earth's core, and when it forms, it would destroy the Earth. This is so messed up. To put this into perspective, what the Diamonds did is basically order the bodies left over from the war to be fused and stitched together, all Frankenstein-like. It's like taking different parts of different humans and stitching them together to make one new man, except they did it on a massive scale, incorporating countless gems into the Cluster. Their minds are still conscious. It's a mess of stitched together souls who are lost and confused, crying out in pain. It's extremely messed up. The Diamonds just don't value life at all. And on top of this, they're most likely committing horrible acts like this across the whole galaxy. Now, all this isn't directly done by White Diamond, but at the end of the day, she has structured and encouraged the Gem Empire to be this way. I'm going to give White Diamond a 2.5 out of 5 for actions. She's really not very involved in the show, but it's implied she's done a lot of terrible things, so I think the 2.5 is relatively fair. Effects on the protagonist. Despite having so little screen time, White Diamond actually manages to affect Steven a lot in their final encounter. White Diamond's speech really affects Steven. She really manages to hit some nerves. At this point in the show, Steven has struggled to come to terms with what and who his mother is. Not only that, he struggled to figure out who he's supposed to be. His mother left behind a lot of baggage that's really affected Steven. White Diamond breaks down Pink Diamond's actions.
You became rose quartz to deceive your pathetic friends, and now you've improved on that because you're even deceiving yourself.
This again throws Steven's mother's motivations into question, which is already an emotional spot for Steven. But the scariest bit about what White Diamond is saying is it might not even be wrong. But Steven deflects by saying it was his mum who did these things, only to be greeted with a chilling laugh. She then makes a really compelling argument to Steven that Pink Diamond, his mother, is hiding within Steven. And this makes Steven and the audience question what's true. Based on what we've seen throughout the show, it's entirely possible that Pink Diamond could still be within Steven, and Steven's identity itself is a lie. Steven Universe does an amazing job at world building and teaching us the mechanics of how the gems and the world works. We have seen Lapis trapped in a mirror, showing that if a gem is embodied in something, it can't reform. So Rose's gem being in Steven would stop her reforming. Steven has had dreams of Pink Diamond's memories, showing that it is very likely she's somewhere in that gem. Steven has all of Rose's powers and is often mistaken for Rose Quartz. There's even that questionable moment in Rose Quartz's room, where Steven causes a projection of his mum. It's possible she's speaking to him through the room. All of this evidence really supports White Diamond's speech. It's enough that what she's saying could actually be true. And that builds up the tension of what will happen to Steven if his gem is removed. It makes Steven question and doubt if he's even real, while White Diamond is 100% certain of her actions. This is a very major effect on the protagonist, to make them even doubt if they are the person they think they are, but the effects she has on Steven aren't over yet. White Diamond does the unthinkable. She removes Steven's gem. This teaches Steven something very, very important about himself. He's always been himself. He's made himself into the person he is through his actions, like everyone else. He's not defined by his mother or the expectations she left for him, intentional or not. Now, this may seem obvious, but Steven Universe has always been about identity, and this moment truly sums up that message. White Diamond removing Steven's diamond shows us something interesting. The screen's perspective is split into two, showing us Steven's perspective, which is now split between his human half and his gem half. Despite being separated, they make one perspective because they're both part of Steven. He's always been himself.
Are you back together? Are you?
Yeah, I'm me. I've always been me.
This is the final piece of Steven's arc. It's a crucial moment, but while she ultimately pushed Steven into a positive place here, the effects of this encounter would come back to harm Steven in the future. Literally, in Steven Universe future. A child isn't going to go through all of this without having some serious baggage and trauma. Steven starts having panic attacks, and his gem starts physically reacting to the stress. But White Diamond's more specific effect on Steven is she helped plant the fear of Steven becoming his mother, or the diamonds in general. In Steven Universe future, White Diamond is trying to turn over a new leaf, and is making significant progress. Steven comes to her for help. She allows Steven to project himself through her, but those old fears, the fears she put in Steven, are only amplified. Seeing White Diamond projecting Steven as Pink Diamond sets off Steven's anxiety to the max. Now, there's lots to say about Steven's mental state in Steven Universe future, but all we really need to know is that even though White Diamond turns good, the effects of what she did still linger in Steven long after the encounter. Despite her short screen time, White Diamond manages to affect Steven a lot, so I'll give her a 4 out of 5 for effects on the protagonist. Conclusion. Now, this isn't technically White Diamond's conclusion, but it is the ending of her being a villain. As previously mentioned, even Steven is starting to doubt himself, questioning who he is. Before Steven can react, she picks him up and does the unthinkable. She extracts Steven's gem. The two separated parts are still Steven. They begin to walk towards each other. White Diamond is first stunned and shocked to see the pink gem form a Steven. She questions it, thinking that Rose Quartz is still there, but Pink Steven simply responds with, "She's gone."
Where is Pink?
She's gone.
What did you say? Answer me!
She's gone!
Pink Steven's scream shocks White Diamond even more, causing her composure to break, angering her. She fires her white light at Pink Steven, but he simply blocks it. She gets even more angry, firing more beams of light, but it's just as effective. Steven's two halves unite. White Diamond breaks down in a childlike tantrum, yelling about how Steven is Pink Diamond and doesn't look or act like this, that Pink is not half human. She yells, "Why are you acting like a child?" And Steven simply responds with, "I am a child, what's your excuse?" Causing White Diamond to blush. White Diamond freaks out, not understanding her emotions. She's manipulated her image for so long that she hasn't expressed emotions for who knows how long. Feeling this way and being not only questioned but wrong hits White Diamond hard. She begins to question who she is and who Steven is. Her very purpose is put into question. As we discussed earlier in the personality and motive section, White Diamond's self-worth is extremely fragile because she doesn't really have a personality. She's just trying to replicate perfection. She's trying to control and be everyone, so she hasn't left any room for herself. Steven offers to help her find out who she is. She says she was trying to make things better, and Steven shows her how she can truly do that. So what do I think of this ending? Well, for White Diamond as a character, it's not super amazing. She shows up for a second time and then is defeated by the power of self-love. That on paper doesn't sound very interesting, but for the conclusion of Steven Universe, it's perfect. The show has always been about identity, so of course the main villain is the lack of identity. And of course she's defeated by the show reinforcing its message of identity. This ending isn't about White Diamond at all, it's about overcoming Steven's final obstacles. I think the ending could have been better if we had more time to build up White Diamond, but the creators of the show were running out of time due to some behind the scenes things. But still, it's an amazing show ending. But this isn't just about the whole show's ending, it's about White Diamond's ending. Now technically this isn't really her ending. It is her ending as a villain, but White Diamond is also in Steven Universe future. Her actual ending has her and the Diamonds visiting Earth to return Steven's shoe. They're shocked to see Steven as a Godzilla-like monster. Now why this is happening is a completely other topic, but White does show her regret in this episode, as she cries about this all being her fault because of her past crimes. She's definitely making progress if she's feeling regret. Her final moment is joining all of Steven's friends in a group hug to show Steven how many people care for him. Side note, I think it's just so funny how awkward White Diamond looks when she's joining the group hug. It shows that even though she is making progress, she's still not fully comfortable with emotions. So overall, I'm going to give White Diamonds a lower score of 2 out of 5 for conclusion. And really, that's because it feels more like a beginning for White Diamond and not an ending. I really hope in the new Steven Universe spin-off show, Lars from the Stars, we get to see White Diamond more. She just didn't get enough screen time, and it would be really cool to explore her past as a dictator and her future progress. So, overall, White Diamond's total score is 19.5 out of 35. She's a really interesting character, but at the end of the day, she's basically only in 2 episodes of the original show, so obviously there are limits to how well I can score her. And really, White Diamond as a character is not as important as what she represents in the show. She perfectly fulfills her role as Steven's final challenge, and is perfect for reinforcing the themes of the show. But now, it's time to move on to our next villain for today, the Nowhere King from Centaurworld. The Nowhere King is a dark creature trapped between worlds, trapped in the great nothing, trapped nowhere. Centaurworld is a unique show. I like what it's trying to do, but I don't think it really stuck the landing. It's a flawed show, but one thing it did really well is its villain. Let's start with design. The Nowhere King's design is very striking because it contrasts so much with a majority of the show. Take a look at our main cast of characters. Then have a look at the Nowhere King. They look like they're from completely different shows, and that's the point. The show is divided into 2 worlds, the goofy centaur world and the dark gritty human world. But we will talk more about that later. The Nowhere King is so far the most monstrous villain I've covered in terms of design. The Nowhere King's body is a black gooey tar-like substance. Its head is a deer skull with green flaming glowing eyes. He has giant antlers, which give him a very imposing silhouette. His 6 legs are long and unsettling, looking like insect legs with hooves, and he has a very long tail. The fact his body is made out of black goo allows his body to flow and change at will. The white skull really stands out against his inky black body. His design is dark and imposing, completely standing out against all the other characters. His character coughs up goo and is constantly dripping black ooze, making him seem very sickly and diseased. The way the Nowhere King moves around is unsettling. He can be lightning fast and precise, or he moves slow as his body sloshes around. The Nowhere King is really reminiscent of No-Face from Spirited Away. Their bodies are similar in their transparent dark forms, topped up with a white contrasting face. The Nowhere King even copies No-Face by eating someone alive. His dark, creepy design is not the only form the Nowhere King takes. Before his body melted and decayed into the monstrous form we see today, he was in the form of a normal elk. Now I guess this elk is pretty standard as far as elks go, although his eyes are very piercing. There are some shots of him that I find a little unsettling, but other than that, he looks innocent enough. He looks particularly creepy when he starts slowly turning into the Nowhere King. But this elk is only half of the Nowhere King. His other half can hide in plain sight. The General at first glance looks like a heroic strong leader. He looks like the perfect human. His armor makes him look strong, but also high class. But the General and the elk also come from something else. The show is called Centaurworld, so of course these two halves come from a centaur called Elktar. Elktar looks completely harmless, and honestly he pretty much is. It's hard to believe this becomes the Nowhere King. Obviously Elktar is half man and half beast, part man, part elk. Unlike most centaurs, we see Elktar has nice clothes, trying to look more civilized. He later even cuts off his antlers to look more human. These two features show how much more he values his human side over his animal side. I really like the Nowhere King's main design. It just screams evil. It's striking, dark, and disturbing, and his other designs represent extremely important stages in his progression into becoming the Nowhere King. The Nowhere King will get a 4 out of 5 for design, personality, and motives. For a creature so dark and evil, his story is actually very sympathetic. What originally motivated him is something that motivates many. Love. Yes, this horrifying creature was motivated by love, but its motives were twisted and deformed until all that remains is revenge and spite. So let's go back to the beginning, where the Nowhere King was a simple centaur. He was a portal engineer, maintaining the link between Centaurworld and the human world, but Elktar views centaurs as jokes. They're just too unserious. He dreams of being human because he believes they're taken more seriously, but his main motivation for wanting to be human is he has a crush on the human princess. Being a centaur makes him feel distant from her. He sings of her not being able to see him, but in truth she adores him, man and beast, but he chooses to ignore this. He chooses to see his centaur half as a flaw, even though the princess loves all of him. It's a self-made image problem. So Elktar used the portal magic he worked on to split himself into two, one all human and one all animal. The Nowhere King was born from the animal side. His human half went on to marry the love of his life, while his animal half was pushed away, watching his other half achieve everything he wanted, growing envious and jealous of his other half. His animal half didn't belong in the human world or Centaurworld. There was nowhere. He was left to scavenge and fend for himself, stealing food. The two parts have a meeting, where his animal half begged they reconnect, saying his life is torture, but the human half obviously refuses since his life is perfect now. So the animal half threatens to tell the love of his life what they did. Without mercy or hesitation, his human half, now known as the General, tries to drown his elk half, ready to completely kill that part of himself, only to realize killing one half kills the other. So instead the General imprisons his animal self in the deepest, darkest cell with no windows that was so small he couldn't even stand. He was trapped down there for 10 years. When the princess found out what her love had done, she let him free. His animal side, now more than ever, felt he had no one or nowhere he could go to, so he decided to make a family himself, creating the first Minotaurs, with the same gate key he used to split himself. The more he used the dark magic, the more the magic corrupted his body, slowly making him decay and mutate. His army of Minotaurs grew bigger, pillaging and destroying anything in their path, and the animal half of himself eventually mutated and transformed more and more into a monster until he became the Nowhere King. The Nowhere King and the General waged a giant war that would completely destroy the human world, leaving it nothing more but a battle-scarred wasteland. Eventually the princess broke the portal between worlds, leaving the General in the human world and the princess in Centaurworld, and the Nowhere King is stuck in the void, trapped between worlds in a place of nothing and nowhere. Now, sorry for all this recapping of the show, but its backstory is so brilliant and tells us everything about the Nowhere King, how his motivation morphed from love to a twisted revenge and self-hatred. For a creature that appeared so utterly evil and monstrous, he is surprisingly deep and sympathetic. But despite how sympathetic he is, everything that happened was caused by his own choices and actions. He completely ignored the princess's thoughts and feelings. He failed to see the beauty she saw in him. He always focused on the parts he loathed about himself. He never tried to self-heal or adapt himself for who he was. He never even tried to understand why she loved him. No, he immediately went straight to the extreme, and once he was split, it got even worse. Everything in the general was also in the Nowhere King. They never really tried to understand each other. Elktar's self-loathing was manifested in the general, leading to his cruel actions against his elk self. All of these horrible and cruel actions show that Elktar could be extremely cruel if given that power and the chance. Both the General and the Nowhere King let their rivalry cause unimaginable suffering and deaths to countless people. He was always very self-centered, not giving a damn about others. The Nowhere King is nothing but jealousy and hatred, while the General is all about manipulation and cruelty, putting on a facade that he's a perfect and great guy. But really, he's just as much of a monster as the Nowhere King. The Nowhere King's motives and personality is going to get a 5 out of 5 from me. It's such a great story, and it just gives us such a great understanding to how something could become so evil. There are many characters who become cruel, pure evil beings, but this has to be one of the best explanations for someone becoming this much of a cruel, cold, and blank monster. Abilities and powers. The Nowhere King's body is a black tar-like liquid. It's extremely malleable. He can shapeshift his body at will. He can grow his body, and he can trap and engulf people in it. And he can form shapes with his body, like extra arms as he needs them. The Nowhere King can also fly around. He's extremely fast and deadly. The Nowhere King can also unhinge his jaw and eat someone whole. This and his speed makes him extremely deadly. His black goop can corrupt and damage magic. But the Nowhere King's most dangerous ability is his knowledge of magic. He uses his knowledge of magic to create an army of Minotaurs. He also seems somewhat magic resistant, being able to eventually break free of Horse's backstory magic. Other than that, we don't really know too much of what he's actually capable of. He actually doesn't show us that many of his abilities, so I'll only be giving him a 2 out of 5 for powers and abilities. Presence. The first episode shows the war-torn land of the humans. This already sets up that something bigger is going on in the show, but it's not until episode 4 that we get a small hint to the Nowhere King. At the end of the episode, we hear the chilling lullaby of the Nowhere King. It's so eerie, and you know what? It actually gives us a lot of information about the Nowhere King. It starts with, "Hush now, hide all you little ones." Obviously, this implies we don't want to be near him. The song says singing and laughter will die, which is a huge contrast to Centaurworld. Every episode is full of singing, and Centaurworld is full of optimistic, joyful characters, so to hear that the Nowhere King is where these things go to die already shows us he's nothing like what we've seen so far in Centaurworld. It also says silent secretive feelings of fearsome hatred that reaches the skies. So again, the song tells us that the Nowhere King is full of an unbelievable amount of rage. And finally, it says, "You'll bring joy to the Nowhere King when he sees the light leaving your eyes." So the only thing that makes the Nowhere King happy is death. This song is honestly the perfect way to hype up your villain. It's chilling and tells us a lot and not much about him. It tells us we should be afraid of him. It tells us he's an angry, cruel creature who only revels in death. In episode 7, his name is again mentioned, saying that the key will lead to him. We once again hear his lullaby. It's extremely ominous, because now our hero's goal of getting the portal key to go home could lead them to this mysterious threat. And finally, he makes his appearance at the very end of episode 9, the second last episode of season 1. Season 1 ends with the first proper confrontation with the Nowhere King. It's a tough battle, and it hints to a much deeper history, but more importantly, he escapes and begins to rebuild his army again, and plans to destroy the human world and Centaurworld. He's a threat to everyone in the show. It perfectly sets up our character's motivation for Season 2. He's barely used in Season 1, but the fact he is so specifically used and so carefully teased, and leaves a lot of intrigue into what and who he is. Season 2 also sparingly uses the Nowhere King. He reappears only a handful of times. We see him growing his army, and he pops up every once in a while just to remind us how much of a threat he is. But really, like Season 1, the Nowhere King is saved for the final episode. The Nowhere King is always used sparingly. It's perfect because it keeps him mysterious right up until the end and never gives us time to feel comfortable with him around. He appears enough to keep his terrifying presence throughout the show. We always get little nuggets of information about him, just enough to keep us curious, but keep him mysterious. The only disadvantage to the Nowhere King being so sparingly used is the fact that he's the best bit of the show. When we are not following the main plot of the show, we go on lots of silly side tangents, which is fine, but I do think it could make some viewers lose interest. When the show is taking itself seriously, it's really good, and the Nowhere King is definitely the highlight. When he's gone for a while, the quality storytelling he brings is definitely missed. The Nowhere King is going to get a 3 out of 5 for presence. He hits a really good balance of being involved but not too involved to ruin his impact. Actions. The Nowhere King doesn't show mercy. His first action we see him do to our heroes is try to kill them. They merely show up in his domain and he tries to kill everyone. When Elktar splits in two, he lies to the princess about his situation. He never trusts her with the truth. When his Elkside escapes imprisonment, he creates the Minotaurs, taking away the lives of whoever he kidnapped, corrupting their bodies and minds for his experiments. But the worst thing the Nowhere King does is take his anger out not only on one world, but two. The Nowhere King and his counterpart, the General, create this whole war. They turn something that should have stayed between them into a conflict that ended countless lives, tore families apart, and left nothing but ruin. We see the Minotaurs attacking and killing innocents, destroying villages, human and Centaur alike. We see Llama Wink's backstory. Her village was destroyed. All her family and friends were all killed, leaving her alone, changing the course of her whole life. The war destroys so much. Centaurworld is able to recover from the damage, but the human world, the war goes on and destroys everything, leaving a worn-torn wasteland behind. In the series final, the Nowhere King and the General try to begin the war again. We don't actually get to see the Nowhere King do a lot on screen, but we see the fallout of his off-screen actions, and they're just devastating, so I'll be giving him a 3 out of 5 for actions. Effects on the protagonist. Long before our main character Horse ever even knew the name of the Nowhere King, her life has been completely molded by him. She's a battle horse, fighting against the Minotaurs. All she's ever known is war, and as discussed, this war is 100% the Nowhere King's fault. But let's get into some more direct effects the Nowhere King has. Is obviously he motivates Horse in Season 2 to stay in Centaurworld to build the army. When Horse enters the Nowhere King's mind, we see there are actually a lot of parallels between Horse and the Nowhere King. For starters, both of these non-human creatures have attachments to a human counterpart. Horse to Ryder and the Nowhere King to the princess. They'll both stop at nothing to get to their human counterpart, but they are both threatened by someone who represents their ideal version. For the Nowhere King, obviously it's the General, this being quite literal in his case. But for Horse, it's Becky Apples. In both cases, the problem is actually self-inflicted. Ryder doesn't care or like Becky Apples. It's only Horse's idea of Becky that worries and makes her jealous. With the Nowhere King, in a way it's similar. Elktar creates this idea that being a centaur is uncivilized and unworthy of the princess's love. He doesn't care about what's actually true, and therefore he actually literally creates the man he's jealous of by splitting himself in two. Horse and the Nowhere King both at first don't fit into Centaurworld. Elktar doesn't want to be a centaur because he views them as silly and goofy. He wants to be taken more seriously by humans, while Horse getting teleported straight out of a war isn't used to the silly nature of Centaurworld. The over-the-top silly nature of Centaurworld makes them uncomfortable. They're even embarrassed by it. But Horse and the Nowhere King differ. The Nowhere King cuts out all of his lighter aspects. He denies the positive aspects of Centaurworld. Centaurworld somewhat represents childhood happiness, friendship, and relationships, and he cuts them out of him, in pursuit of maturity and the more adult world. While Horse slowly learns to embrace both worlds, she understands how important friendship and childlike wonder are, but she keeps her perseverance and leadership skills from her time in the human world. She accepts both worlds, while the Nowhere King is a warning of rejecting both, belonging nowhere. He's a dark warning of what happens when we reject and isolate key aspects of ourselves. Horse learned to accept herself and build relationships with many people. She built a community that cares about her. She built a place she belongs. While the Nowhere King couldn't accept himself, and he ignored his friends, the princess loved him, but he ignored her and pushed her away, all by his own choices. The Nowhere King says Horse belongs nowhere like me, seeing their parallels. But Horse responds that she belongs with her rider and her herd, and her friends. The Nowhere King helped Horse realize what's important. In the Season 1 final, when the Nowhere King threatens Ryder and Horse, her herd comes to her aid, showing that she has people she belongs with. The Nowhere King shows her what not to be. Overall, there's a lot of layers to how Horse is affected by the Nowhere King. There are very literal ways, like the war, but there are also more subtle parallels. I'll give the Nowhere King a 3.5 out of 5 for effects on the protagonist. He affects her a lot, but it's not as direct and personal as some villains I've covered. Conclusion. Does the Nowhere King have a satisfying conclusion? Well, let's find out. The General's true colors are revealed. He stabs Ryder to save the Nowhere King, to save himself from death. The General approaches the Nowhere King and asks, alright, so now what? He simply says, "Now more suffering. It's all that's left for us." Then the princess arrives, the one they told themselves they did this all for. The general sees her and says,
You're alive. I had always hoped that you'd survived.
Her eyes give him an angry, questioning look. Horse interrupts, saying he doesn't love you. That isn't what love looks like. The princess looks at the unconscious and wounded rider, and she looks around at the fallen of the battlefield, and sees the purest suffering that the Nowhere King and the general have caused. The general tries to worm his way out of it, saying he knows how bad it looks, but he did it all for love, saying he had to survive to see her again, so he could tell her that he loves her, and this moment just breaks her. At the end of Season 1, the princess struggled to kill the Nowhere King, unable to do it, still seeing the centaur she loved, but seeing all this destruction pushes her to the edge. It helps her see the truth. He was always selfish. He never actually cared about what she wanted. Despite how sympathetic he is, he did it all to himself. He lied to her about how he became human. He claims everything he did was for the love he felt for her, but he can't shift the blame to her. He never considered what she wanted, so she snaps. She charges the general on her horse, pinning him up against the cliff, giving him a single moment to realize how screwed he is. Then the horse kicks him off the cliff, sending the general plummeting to his doom. The Nowhere King swirls up into the air. His body bloats and deforms as he feels the pain from the general's fall. The elk skull roars and sucks all the inky black mass of his body back inside himself, then bellows it out into the sky, his pained roar signaling everyone to stop. The much smaller Nowhere King dives into the gorge the general fell in. The princess makes her way down to find a very broken, melting, and dying Nowhere King, sitting next to the broken, unconscious general. As if he's guarding him, he's a wounded beast now. The princess uses the key to reunite the general, so she can see them as they once were. The Nowhere King willingly accepts this. Elktar now lies in the black, gooing remains of the Nowhere King. The princess begins to sing about how she would have loved him, how he was. Her song transforms into the Nowhere King's lullaby, but this time instead of eerie, it's sad. The lyrics have now changed to talking about moving on. Elktar joins in, but the song turns more determined. She silences him, as she is now finally ready to silence him once and for all. You can see the pain in her eyes. She sings about the crime he personally did to her, giving the now fully whole centaur a brief moment to feel the pain and guilt of both the general and the Nowhere King's monstrous actions. And as the song closes, she strikes him down, putting an end to both monsters. It's extremely fitting that the Nowhere King goes out to the lullaby that was used to introduce him. And of course, it's extremely fitting that the one he loved, the one he tricked himself into believing he did this all for, is the one who put him down. I also like that despite how sympathetic he is, there's no mercy when it comes to putting him down. There's sorrow, but not mercy. He's caused so much harm to the world, and to ensure its survival, he can't be left alive. It's also just so powerful, this scene, seeing the princess feel all the pain and weight of what she's going to do, but also not hesitating and making sure she doesn't make the mistakes she's made before. I will give the Nowhere King a 4 out of 5 for conclusion. Overall, the Nowhere King is an extremely interesting character. It's just incredibly interesting to see how deep his character is. I personally have mixed feelings on Centaurworld. I love what it's trying to do, with its themes of children's animation and adult animation clashing, and how this show stands between them. But I just personally don't think it fits together as well as it could have. But there's no denying how much of a standout character the Nowhere King is in this series. He gets a total score of 24.5 out of 35. Now finally, time to cover our last evil ruler for today. Fire Lord Ozai from Avatar: The Last Airbender. He is the cruel ruler of the Fire Nation, a nation of people who can control and bend fire. They have waged a 100-year war on all the other 3 nations, on the Air, Water, and Earth Nation. Let's start with Ozai's design. There's a lot of anticipation building up to the Fire Lord's reveal. For a long time we never see his face, just his silhouette, or the back of his head, or even just his mouth. Sometimes we see him from a distance, so his face is blurred. He's presented this way to make him seem almost mythical. Ever since the first episode, we have known about the Fire Nation's war, but in episode 5, we finally hear his name. Aang's old friend Bumi tells him about Fire Lord Ozai, telling Aang he will need to face Ozai in the future. So Ozai is the show's ultimate goal and final boss. Once he is finally revealed, we can see he definitely dresses as you would expect an evil emperor to dress, wearing grand gold and red robes. The shoulder pads are wide and pointy, making him look bigger and more intimidating. Not that he needs to, his face is very striking, always holding a stern or disappointed look, which only occasionally shows joy, but not joy like you or I would feel, but a sick, cruel joy found only in others' suffering. But the most important part of his design is his crown. It's a golden flame that fits into the top of his hair bun. It's the symbol of the ruler of the Fire Nation. But being as egocentric as Ozai is, being a Fire Lord isn't enough. He promotes himself to a new role he made up, the Phoenix King, which of course comes with some fresh drip. It has bigger shoulder pads with golden phoenixes on it, and a new helmet. It kind of looks like Magneto's helmet with wings. But despite all of his fancy outfits, when it comes time to battle, he doesn't need it, because god damn, this guy doesn't skip the gym. His ripped physique alone is enough to intimidate anyone. I wouldn't want to fight this guy, even if he didn't have firebending. Man, I really need some gym tips from this guy. And finally, I want to mention Ozai's voice. Actor Mark Hamill, who's famously known for Luke Skywalker, a famously heroic figure, Mark has an exceptional vocal range, being the voice actor for my favorite Joker. He can switch his voice from innocent to evil very quickly. For Ozai, his vocals are extremely ominous. His voice really makes so much of the character. Firelord Ozai will get a 2 out of 5 for design. Personality and motives. Firelord Ozai's motives are pretty straightforward. He wants power. Ozai's great-grandfather Sozin started a 100-year war, and his family continued to rule over the Fire Nation and continue the war, oppressing and invading the other nations. Ozai is continuing his family tradition, but that's more because it aligns with his hunger for power, not because of any love for his family. Ozai is a greedy, evil man. He wants everyone to bow before him. Ruling the Fire Nation isn't enough. He needs the whole world to bow before him. His ego shows in the end of the show when the title Firelord isn't enough. Not even the highest rank is enough. He needs to make a new rank above that, the Phoenix King. This rank represents his evil goal for burning and destroying the old world and building a new world fully under his control. As mentioned, Ozai cares far more about power than family. His brother Iroh was supposed to be Firelord, but his son died in the siege, Ba Sing Se, and it broke Iroh, making him abandon the siege. Ozai took advantage of this to convince his father to make him the new heir to the throne, since his bloodline is still strong with his kids, kicking his brother while he's already at his lowest. He's so self-interested that he doesn't really care about his children. He views them more as tools, to be used in his evil plans. He is a very violent and aggressive man, using extreme measures to discipline his son, Zuko, burning the mark onto his face. He feels no empathy for this. Overall, the bottom line is that he's an extremely self-concerned and cruel man. He wants to control and manipulate everyone around him, especially his children. Nothing matters to him but his ambition. He's not a very deep character, but that actually works well. As I said, characters are tools for writers to use. Ozai is the ultimate enemy. He's perfect for driving the plot forward, especially for Aang and Zuko. But despite this, he's still only going to get a 1.5 out of 5 for personality and motives. It's all pretty standard evil guy stuff. It would feel unfair to give him a high score when we have characters like the Nowhere King who are so deep and complicated. Abilities and powers. You won't believe this, but Firelord Ozai has the shocking power of firebending. But seriously, to get more specific, he is a very powerful firebender. He specifically plans to use his power during the time of Sozin's comet. The comet enhances all firebenders' fire ability. So, we see Ozai using some of the most extreme firebending in the show. And to go with this insane firebending, he is just in general a great fighter. We see him go toe-to-toe with Aang. Now granted, the comet is enhancing his power, but he is still fighting Aang at the end of the show, when he has mastered all 4 bending elements, so obviously Aang is extremely strong, so to go head to head with him is impressive. One of Firelord Ozai's more unique skills is his lightning bending, something only a handful of people can do. It's a rare skill for firebenders. It's also extremely deadly, only a few benders know how to counter it. Outside of bending, Ozai has a skill for commanding and manipulating. You don't become an emperor without some smarts. Despite how cruel he is, the citizens of the Fire Nation love him, so he must have a fair bit of charisma at least. I'll give Firelord Ozai a 3 out of 5 for powers. His powers are good, but they're not too crazy impressive, and on top of that he is using the comet to enhance his powers as well. Presence. Ozai is used very precisely through Avatar The Last Airbender. It's rare that we see him get directly involved, but that's not really his place. In episode 1, we see that the Fire Nation is leading the 100-year war against the rest of the world. This sets up the threat and the goal of the show: defeat the Fire Nation and bring balance to the world. Then in episode 5, we get his first name drop by King Boonie. He basically sets the goal that Aang will eventually have to face Ozai in one final confrontation. This battle looms over Aang throughout the rest of the show. The sheer pressure of this upcoming fight pushes Aang to do so much throughout the show. It even plagues Aang's dreams. We see him have nightmares of Ozai before Aang even knows what he looks like, so in his mind it becomes very exaggerated. We only get our first look at Ozai in episode 8, but even then it's only his silhouette. They would go on to tease him in this manner for a while, giving us small glimpses but never showing his face until season 3, episode 1. So the suspense and tension was high. As the show went on, Ozai only became more and more intimidating as we see what things he's done, especially to his own son Zuko. We learn early on that the scar on Zuko's face was caused by his own father, the Fire Lord. Zuko spoke out of line at an important meeting, showing concern for Fire Nation soldiers. But the Fire Lord is outraged that he would speak out of line, so he forces Zuko to fight him. Zuko refuses to fight his own father, but Ozai doesn't care and burns his face, giving him his iconic scar. Zuko is then banished from the Fire Nation until he either captures or kills the Avatar, and no one has even seen the Avatar in 100 years, so it's basically an impossible task. He does this to his own son, so what's he willing to do to his enemies? He's always ordering or intimidating people when he appears on screen. Fire Lord Ozai is used sparingly, but he never fails to be intimidating. While he doesn't directly involve himself in a lot, the reach of his tyranny throughout the world is a constant reminder that Aang will eventually have to face this monster. I'll give Ozai a 4.5 out of 5 for presence. Actions. Well, let's get the big obvious one out of the way. Fire Lord Ozai is continuing the 100-Year War, invading and attacking the other nations. Every war crime, every invaded village, every person who falls in the war, it all comes back to the Fire Lord. He could end it anytime he wants, but no, he pushes the war ever onwards. The next obvious thing Ozai does is burn Zuko's face. It shows the audience and the world how cruel he is. It shapes Zuko into the person he is. It's what drives him to hunt the Avatar. Zuko would become one of the main threats for Aang on his journey, and it all comes from his father, Ozai. Ozai also personally leads the attack against the Earth Kingdom during Sozin's Comet. He plans to incinerate everyone in the Earth Kingdom, and finally, during this attack, he finally fights Aang, doing everything in his power to directly kill Aang. I'll give Ozai a 2.5 out of 5 for actions. His actions are powerful, but often indirect. He causes harm for his armies, but that doesn't mean he hesitates to demonstrate how cruel he can be whenever he gets the chance. Effects on the protagonist. Obviously, Ozai has a very significant effect on Aang. I mean, the main goal of the show is to defeat the Fire Lord, and to do that, the Avatar must master all elements to restore balance. Most of the show is spent following Aang trying to master all 4 elements. And the pressure is on because of Ozai. Without the motivation, Aang may have not become the powerful Avatar he needed to be. His journey to defeat Ozai helps Aang mature as a person. This is especially apparent in the final episode. Aang is faced with the decision on what to do with Ozai. Everyone thinks Aang must do what must be done and execute him, but Aang knows this is not the way and finds a new alternative. Before his fight, we see how much the weight of the upcoming fight has on Aang. The weight of the whole world is on his shoulders. It gets so bad that he has nightmares about Ozai, making him completely paranoid. He can't sleep and he's starting to go crazy over the pressure. We see this represented in Aang's dreams. Ozai is shown to be a giant towering over Aang. Aang starts to show off as a go-lucky kid, but the burden the Fire Nation puts on him really forces him to mature fast. Now, Aang is not the only one affected. Every step of Zuko's journey is shaped by Ozai. I won't go too much into Zuko's story because that's a video of its own, but the angry, driven person Zuko was forged by Ozai, and without Ozai's pure evil being so over the top, it actually allows Zuko to see how wrong Ozai is. Ozai's simple, unwavering evil forces everyone to work to be their best so they can beat him. Ozai gets a 3 out of 5 for effects on the protagonist. He obviously affects our main character Aang a lot, but there are many other villains following his command that affect Aang more than Ozai himself. Finally, let's now talk about his conclusion. Ever since his name was first uttered in the show, the story has been building up to this final showdown with Ozai, this one final conclusion. Ozai, now the newly crowned Phoenix King, and his fleet of firebenders flying on their airships, powered by Sozin's Comet, Ozai unleashes the biggest wave of firebending we've seen in the show so far. The giant wall of fire consumes everything below. Aang stands atop a giant stone column, watching the wall of fire approach. Aang hurdles some boulders at the airships. They send Ozai's ship downward. Aang finishes it with a blast of fire. As the ship plummets down to the earth, Ozai and Aang lock eyes, and it's on. Ozai's new Phoenix King outfit is stripped away to reveal how ripped he is. Then, using his firebending, he flies in off the falling ship over to Aang. Man, there is so much aura farming from Ozai. as he flies in. It's crazy. Ozai sees Aang as a prize. After all the generations of Fire Lords who couldn't find the Avatar, now he falls into Ozai's hands. Aang takes this as one last chance to make peace, offering Ozai an alternative of peace. But Ozai doesn't care, showing off his amplified fire. He then unleashes a tidal wave of fire on Aang, starting the fight. And boy, this fight does not disappoint. We see two of the most powerful benders going all out. Aang using all of his training over the show to fight, taking advantage of every element. As the fight rages on, Ozai shoots lightning at Aang. He transfers the energy from Ozai's blast and has the chance to send it back at Ozai. For a second, Ozai feels fear as he realizes that his life is in Aang's hands. But of course, Aang won't kill him and shoots the energy into the sky, giving Ozai a moment to strike. Ozai gets the upper hand in the fight. He takes the moment to call Aang weak, and cuts deep by telling him that the Airbenders were so weak that they don't deserve to live in his world. Aang seems doomed, but he channels the Avatar state, unleashing the ultimate power of the Avatar, and unleashing all the elements on Ozai. The fight becomes effortless to Aang. He wipes the floor with Ozai. The Fire Lord doesn't stand a chance. Aang becomes an unstoppable force, and all Ozai can do is run. Aang traps him, the voice of all the Avatars saying,
Fire Lord Ozai, you and your forefathers have devastated the balance of this world, and now you shall pay the ultimate price.
They unleash all the elements on him, about to finish him, but Aang hesitates and breaks the Avatar state. He knows killing is Ozai's way. He refuses to accept this path, a path that seems inevitable. As if to prove his point, Ozai sees Aang's choice as weakness, and again goes to strike, but Aang is ready and retraps him. Aang then tries something new. He connects with his energy, and connects with Ozai's. Their spirits seem to fight. Aang is nearly consumed by Ozai's nearly unbeatable spirit, but Aang proves himself to be stronger, and Ozai's red energy is consumed by Aang's blue. This removes Ozai's bending forever. Aang forged his own path, choosing not to kill. He took away the one thing Ozai valued over everything, power. He left him with nothing, no longer capable of being the Phoenix Lord, let alone the Fire Lord. Fire Lord Ozai is then left at the merciless teasing of Toph and Sokka. And finally, he's chucked in a cell to rot. He's given a chance to reflect on his mistakes, but he never will. This ending was pure awesomeness. This battle has been hyped up since Season 1, Episode 5, when we first heard his name. The whole show has been building to this. Aang spent most of the show training for this fight, so it had to be really epic, and man, does the fight itself do that. Ozai is truly a worthy opponent. There's no holding back in this fight. And the end where Aang completely kicks his butt is just awesome. It's just fun seeing the Avatar get to unleash his full power. But I'm also glad Aang got to spare Ozai. To be honest, it would have felt wrong for Aang to straight up kill him. Plus, it feels more satisfying to see Ozai stripped of power than just eliminated. I'm going to give Ozai a 3.5 out of 5 for his conclusion. It's not insanely deep, but it does its job perfectly. Ozai was never an extremely complex character like most of the cast of Avatar The Last Airbender. In fact, he stands out for how unforgivably evil and one-note he is. But that's not bad. He fulfills his job perfectly. He's a tool used by the writers to make the rest of the story work. His role, while not always front and center, is probably one of the most important in the show. He's the face of the Fire Nation. He's the manifestation of the Fire Nation itself. He gives it a face so other characters have something to aim for. He also pushes other villains to be better characters and gives them a chance to be deeper characters. Aang and Zuko really needed Ozai for them to develop as characters. Ozai gets a total score of 20 out of 35. So how do our villains rank up? In last place is White Diamond with her 19.5 out of 35 score. Then Ozai with a very close score of 20 out of 35. And finally, that leaves us with the Nowhere King in first place, with a score of 24.5 out of 35. But that's not all. For those of you following my villain ranking series, let's add our new additions to the list. So unfortunately for Gideon from Gravity Falls, he's still at the bottom in spot 15 with his score of 17.5. Then in 14th place, we have the Collector from the Owl House with a score of 19. With today's new entry, that gives us a tie for the 13th spot on the list, between the Devil from Cuphead and White Diamond from Steven Universe, so I'll just pick which one goes where based on my personal bias. Sorry Devil, but you'll be taking the 13th spot, and White Diamond will be going in 12th place. In 11th place, we have another tie between Toffee from Star vs. the Forces of Evil and Fire Lord Ozai. Between the two, I think Toffee is more of a character, while Ozai is more of a figurehead, so I'll put Ozai in 11th place, and Toffee in 10th place. In 9th place, we have the Beast from Over the Garden Wall with a score of 20.5. In 8th place, we have the core from Amphibia, also with a score of 20.5. In 7th place is King Andreas, also from Amphibia, with a score of 21. In 6th place, we have the Lord Commander from Final Space, with a score of 24. In 5th place, we have the Nowhere King, our top dog for this video, with his score of 24.5. Then, in 4th place, we have Death from Puss in Boots 2 The Last Wish, with a score of 26.5. In 3rd place, we have Emperor Bellos from the Owl House, with a score of 27. In 2nd place, we have the Lich from Adventure Time and Fiona and Cake, with a score of 29. And finally, in 1st place, we have Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls, with a score of 31. Man, that list is getting really long. I look forward to seeing who's added next. Speaking of which, it's that time again for you guys to vote who I'll rank next. As always, I'll have a poll on my community section on my channel. Now, you guys have given me so many good suggestions for villains, but I really need some time to catch up on all the shows that you guys want me to watch. So keep the suggestions coming, but for our next vote, we will stick to movie villains so I have a little less to watch. So, option 1 for the next video is ranking the Kung Fu Panda villains. This would include the villains from the first 3 movies, and maybe the Chameleon if the video's not too long. Option 2, I could cover Titan from Megamind and Syndrome from The Incredibles. I feel like these two fit together really well. I was thinking of doing the Spot from the Spider-Verse films, but I would like to wait for the third one to come out before I cover him, so I'm thinking instead I could cover Professor Callahan from Big Hero 6. But if you guys have better suggestions for a third villain, let me know. Option 3 could be short villains. I could cover Lord Farquaad from Shrek, Mr. O'Hare from the Lorax, and maybe Rumpelstiltskin also from Shrek. I could do that, or I could just do a Shrek villains ranking instead. Option 4, we could cover pest control villains like the Verminator from Over the Hedge, the Snatcher from the Box Trolls, and either Stan Beals from the Ant Bully, or Victor Quatermain from Wallace and Gromit Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Maybe after the next villain ranking, we'll do more video options, like Best Animated World to Live in Part 2, or Best Animated Moments Part 2, or Animated Protagonist Ranking Part 2. We will see. But anyway, I think I've talked enough, so thanks for bearing with me, and I'll see you guys soon.